Disclaimer: I doesn't claim any of the arts. All the picture shown belongs to the respective artist and company. If you are original owner and want me to remove the video, I will do it immediately. Just send me an email to inform me. And if you liked my content, please subscribe to the channel. Chapter begins, and we find Wolfgang in a state of disbelief, grappling with the sheer madness of the situation. He couldn't fathom that Theo had the nerve to propose a deal with the clan leader. As a half-blood, Theo clearly didn't understand his place. Wolfgang believed that Theo's arrogance would lead to his downfall, as making a deal suggested both parties were equals. To Wolfgang's astonishment, Kyle supported Theo's bold move. Turning to Theo, Kyle declared that if he truly wanted to be the successor, he needed to demonstrate such courage. He then asked Ed if he had any objections. Knowing he couldn't openly oppose the clan leader, Ed feigned humility, stating that everything in Ragnar belonged to Kyle, and he wouldn't dare question his decisions. Satisfied, Kyle commanded immediate preparations for Theo's trial, instructing the council to set the stage. As he left the room, he remarked that he would test Theo right then and there. Theo remained silent but smiled, confident that his plan was unfolding perfectly. Later on the stage, Kyle and the dragon head stood on one side while Theo faced them from the other. Ed seethed with frustration, realizing that the trap he had set for Theo had transformed into an opportunity for him to rise. Despite his growing anxiety, Ed reassured himself that Theo couldn't possibly withstand a single blow from the clan leader, a feat even high-ranking swordsmen struggled to achieve. With a wicked grin, Ed envisioned Theo's demise on that very stage. However, Theo was fully aware of Ed's expectations for his defeat. He smiled confidently, knowing that his fate was different thanks to a reward he had received during a tutorial. Noticing something unusual about Theo, Kyle asked if he had consumed an elixir while no one was watching. Although such rapid growth seemed impossible, Kyle shrugged it off as unimportant. He had sensed the change in Theo even when others hadn't. At the end of the day, Theo was still his flesh and blood. Kyle then asked if Theo felt warmed up for the challenge. When Theo affirmed that he was ready, Kyle explained that normally he would wield his great sword, but would use a rusty steel sword since Theo didn't yet know how to use mana. He asked the other dragon heads if they had any objections. They all agreed, without hesitation. As Kyle began releasing his aura, Theo was overwhelmed by the intense pressure emanating from his father. The sheer force of Kyle's fighting spirit made the air feel heavy. It was as if a mountain pressed down on him. Trembling under this weight, Theo felt both fear and exhilaration. Kyle noticed and commented on his surprise that Theo was still standing, despite such crushing pressure. Theo smiled proudly. He knew he could endure it because his strength stat had nearly tripled, thanks to an experience elixir reward from clearing the tutorial. This elixir had granted him 5 additional levels, all allocated to strength. His level had risen by 7 points, and his strength soared to 52. With this newfound power coursing through him, Theo felt liberated, as if he had stepped into an extraordinary realm. Kyle raised his sword high, and everyone held their breath in anticipation. As Kyle swung the sword toward Theo, he quickly braced himself for impact. The sword struck him with tremendous force, causing the ground beneath him to explode into fragments. Thick smoke filled the air from the shattered earth. When it cleared, Kyle stood astonished. Theo had managed to block his strike. Impressed yet surprised, Kyle released Theo and began walking away. Before leaving, he remarked that it had been ages since he found a worthy son. In that moment, however, Theo's sword cracked and shattered into pieces as exhaustion overwhelmed him and darkness claimed him. Ed and Wolfgang were left in disbelief at what they had just witnessed, Theo enduring such a blow, while Julius and Osa felt relieved. Kyle then announced that Theo Ragnar had proven his innocence through sheer willpower and declared the trial concluded. A system notification appeared before Theo congratulating him for successfully completing the sudden quest titled Single Strike of Kyle Ragnar. As a reward, he gained inventory authority and a blue key. The next day, sunlight streamed through the window and warmed Theo's face as it roused him from slumber. Confused about where he was, he barely processed his surroundings before his mother Cecilia rushed in with tears of relief at seeing him awake. She frantically asked if he understood how terrified she was upon hearing about him being struck by the clan leader's sword, and urged him to move his arms to check for injuries. Sitting up and reassuring her that he was fine, Theo asked where they were, just as Julius entered the room with news. By order of the clan leader, Amel, the former lady of Camellia Palace, along with Axion and Ed from Intelligence, had been removed from their positions. Shocked at this revelation, Theo asked if it meant he had passed. Julius confirmed with pride that indeed it was true, and informed him they were currently in Camellia Palace. The system popped up again, indicating an update. Theo had completed the Camellia Palace mission with a new task, uncovering its secrets. Meanwhile, outside Camellia Palace, Amel furiously stomped her feet in disbelief at being forced out of what she considered her rightful property while ignoring her servants. Desperate pleas for calm. Inside Camellia Palace, Ed seethed with anger as he called Axion over, ordering him to kill Theo Ragnar. Axion casually replied that he intended to take one of Theo's arms during the upcoming awakening ceremony, but Ed, filled with fury, demanded Axion take his head instead. Realizing how serious things were based on Ed's wrathful expression made Axion reconsider. Back inside Camellia Palace, deep in thought about how events had unfolded differently than anticipated, yet far better than expected for himself. Theo reveled in gaining control without revealing his trump card while also acquiring inventory authority. Curious about this new power, he opened his inventory and pulled out an apple, taking a bite while marveling at being able to store items seemingly out of thin air. Though not fully grasping how it worked, it promised great utility ahead. Reaching back into his inventory once more, he retrieved the blue key categorized as miscellaneous, with its effect listed as dungeon opening, requiring a matching dungeon gate. Glancing at a room emitting blue light earlier made him realize its connection to this mysterious key. Inserting it into the lock confirmed it fit perfectly. Thank you for watching my video so far. If you like this video, please subscribe to my channel. When the door creaked open, Theo was stunned to discover not just another room, but a hidden cave lurking behind it. Suddenly, a message from the system flashed before him, announcing that he had found a dungeon for the very first time. As a reward, all experience gained inside would be doubled. Theo could hardly believe that a cave lay concealed within Camellia Palace. This had to be part of some grand quest. Determined not to miss out on the extra experience, he stepped forward but halted, realizing he couldn't go in empty-handed. After a moment of thought, he filled his inventory with an array of swords. Armed with a sword and shield, Theo ventured into the dungeon. As he delved deeper into the cave, he heard rustling sounds around him. His eyes widened in shock when he came face to face with a gigantic white wolf, so large it could easily be mistaken for a demonic beast. The wolf wasted no time and lunged at him. Luckily, Theo reacted swiftly, blocking its powerful jaws with his shield just in time. "Pretty strong," he murmured to the beast before swinging his sword at its side. He shouted defiantly, eager to prove that he wouldn't back down in this battle of strength. But the wolf was quick. It released his shield and jumped back, narrowly dodging his attack. Baring its fangs, the wolf charged at him once more, and Theo charged forward to meet it head-on. He slashed at the beast, but it seemed unfazed and continued its furious assault. Theo blocked with his shield and quickly realized how tough the creature's hide was. His regular attacks weren't enough to hurt it. "This is no ordinary wolf," he thought, recalling tales of demonic beasts from beyond the northern wall. This creature could easily rival one of those legendary monsters. As the wolf swiped its sharp claws at him, Theo ducked just in time and dashed forward. Remembering the brilliant ray of light from his father's single strike, the breathtaking arc of pure white energy, Theo raised his sword high, trying to mimic that technique as he swung down at the wolf. But the beast easily dodged by tilting its head aside and leaped backward. Cursing under his breath, Theo realized replicating that strike wouldn't be easy. He understood that a single strike meant delivering a blow so powerful it could ensure certain defeat in one swift motion. The key was to pour everything into one perfect swing. Deciding to focus entirely on his sword skills and the secret arts of speed that Evelyn had taught him, Theo let go of his shield. He leaped high into the air, catching the wolf off guard. The beast looked around in confusion, and before it could react, Theo came crashing down from above, driving his sword straight into the wolf's head. The wolf howled in agony as Theo pulled his sword free, blood pouring from one of its eyes. A smile spread across his face. He felt a surge of satisfaction at his success. Now blinded in one eye, the wolf growled in rage. Confident that he could finish this fight, Theo dashed toward the injured beast, ready for the final strike. 2 months later, at training ground number 4, Sybil noticed a growing crowd gathering and suggested they might need to change locations due to the increasing number of people. Ever since word spread that Kyle Ragnar had taught Theo the famous single strike, more and more warriors were eager to spar with him. Just then, Henry Morris from Plum Blossom Palace interrupted their conversation with mockery. He taunted them about when their incredible young master would finally show up. It had been 2 months since Theo's last appearance. Perhaps he had run away after word of his trial victory spread too far? Henry even hinted that Theo might have exaggerated his achievements since there were no witnesses to confirm his triumphs. Before Henry could continue his insults, Sybil landed a punch square on his face, sending him flying backward. One of Henry's companions shouted angrily at Sybil's audacity, but quickly fell silent when they noticed the furious knights surrounding Sybil. Seething with anger, Sybil insulted Henry and his group, declaring they were nothing compared to Theo. In an attempt to ease tensions, someone made a light-hearted comment about Sybil's appearance. But Sybil remained furious. He was fed up with these troublemakers and wouldn't let them insult their young master any longer. With that declaration, Sybil called on his comrades to draw their swords, declaring that battle was upon them. The knights from Plum Blossom Palace followed suit, readying their weapons. Just as tensions were about to boil over into chaos, a figure with long blue hair appeared out of nowhere and froze both sides in their tracks. The group recognized him as Frost Sword Ray Ragnar, one of the 4 Hounds of the North. Moments later, loud laughter echoed through the training ground as another figure arrived, Black Bear Hulkus, another member of the 4 Hounds. The knights were shocked to see 2 members of such legendary status present. However, Hulkus seemed disappointed by the gathering and asked where Theo was, referring to him as Luster Tiger, and making it clear that he had come specifically to challenge Theo. Meanwhile, deep within Camellia Palace's dungeon sat Theo, exhausted and drenched in sweat as he clutched his half-broken sword. The system kept notifying him that he had leveled up multiple times. He had been hunting demonic beasts relentlessly and had taken down a 170 so far. Only 1 beast remained in the dungeon, 1 out of 171. As Theo rested against the body of a slain wolf nearby, a loud growl echoed through the darkness. His status window popped up before him. Level 15, Strength 91, Vitality 20, Intelligence 19, Allocatable Stats 0, Dexterity 25, Magic Power 198, Luck -6, Unknown Stats, too many to count. Theo reached into his inventory and pulled out a shimmering potion, downing it in one swift motion. Almost instantly, he felt the warmth of healing wash over him, mending his wounds and restoring his strength. He had danced with death many times in this treacherous dungeon, but the beginner healing potion, which revived 10% of his health, had been his lifeline more than once. As he surveyed the fallen demonic beasts around him, Theo couldn't help but reflect on how grueling the early battles had been. Yet, with each victory and every level gained, the challenges became less daunting. Time had flown by, and it was hard to believe that 2 months had slipped away since he first set foot in this dark labyrinth. Looking around, Theo noticed that only 1 beast remained. This meant the final boss was about to make its entrance. He climbed the stairs to the 5th floor, where his ultimate challenge awaited. As he walked, he realized with a pang of regret that his sword had been shattered in the fierce fights. Casting aside the broken weapon, he retrieved another from his inventory, a ceremonial blade gifted by his mother on his birthday. He examined the sword closely, memories flooding back. In his previous life, he had dismissed it carelessly during a time of tension with his mother, leading up to the awakening ceremony. Frustrated and angry, he had shouted at her, insisting that birthdays and presents were meaningless compared to the importance of bloodlines. He remembered her hurt expression as he left the sword to rust away. Now, as he held it again, he vowed not to repeat those mistakes. With resolve strengthening his heart, Theo pressed on toward the boss area. The system chimed in to inform him that he had arrived at the boss room, warning him to be cautious. An imposing demonic beast was about to emerge. As he stepped into the chamber, his breath caught in his throat at the sight before him. Massive claws, a long tail, and a terrifying maw. It was a dragon. No, a lesser drake lay before him in slumber. Approaching carefully, Theo let out a small sigh of relief. It wasn't a full-fledged dragon after all. Still, caution gripped him as he recalled legends of the Ragnar clan, descendants of dragons themselves. Was this mere coincidence? One thing was certain. To clear the dungeon and complete his quest, he had to defeat this drake. The system displayed his final objective for scenario quest number 1. The last demonic beast of the dungeon loomed ahead. Taking a deep breath, Theo steeled himself for battle. Doubts flickered through his mind about whether he could truly defeat a creature so closely related to dragons. Positioning himself for combat, he decided to employ the single flash technique he had honed against dire wolves in earlier battles. While it paled in comparison to his father's legendary dragon flash, Theo believed that if he harnessed the power of his dragon heart fully, he could land a significant blow. With determination surging through him, Theo dashed forward with sword drawn. The drake stirred as it sensed danger and opened its eyes just as Theo struck with precision. The single flash pierced one of its eyes. Blood gushed from the wound, confirming that his plan had succeeded. The enraged drake swung its massive tail towards him. With quick reflexes, Theo leaped aside just in time to avoid being crushed beneath its weight. He had hoped for a fatal strike but hadn't reached deep enough. Still, he saw potential in this fight as the drake growled angrily. Without hesitation, Theo charged again, raising his sword high as he activated Jester's footwork, a technique that allowed him to leap around at incredible speed while slashing at the beast. For a fleeting moment, hope surged within him. Perhaps victory was within reach. He launched another attack aimed at distracting the drake before targeting its weak point. But just as Theo prepared to execute his plan, the drake let out a bone-chilling scream that echoed through the chamber. The system immediately warned him. Fear ability activated. Panic gripped him as movement became sluggish. Fear reduced his agility by 10%. The drake's intense gaze paralyzed him as its claws came crashing down. Theo tried to block with his sword but was thrown back violently against the cave wall. Blood trickled from a wound on his head. This was no ordinary foe. This was a true boss-level opponent. If he didn't end this battle soon, things would spiral out of control. Gathering every ounce of courage left within him, Theo charged once more as the drake lunged forward. He quickly identified its weak point, the reverse scale on its neck. As its jaws descended toward him like an impending doom, Theo ducked low and thrust his sword into that exposed scale with all his might. The blade sank deep into the drake's neck. Shock registered on its face as it halted mid-attack. But Theo wasn't finished yet. He drove the sword deeper still. The creature screamed in agony as triumph flickered in Theo's heart. His strategy had worked. However, fury ignited within the drake's eyes as it glared at him with primal rage before unleashing another deafening roar. Fear surged through Theo again. Panic threatened to overtake him. Meanwhile, back at training ground number 4, tension crackled among the knights present. Civil and others stood frozen in disbelief as Hulkus demanded an explanation from Rai for why Theo Ragnar needed to face him first. Rai dismissed Hulkus with disdain. Losers should stay out of it, which only fueled Hulkus's anger further. Hulkus retorted that 3 years had passed since their last duel and claimed he had improved enough to challenge Rai now. But Rai continued tauntingly calling Hulkus a loser until Hulkus snapped. He lunged at her, demanding they duel again for their right to face Theo. With a mighty swing of his massive sword aimed at Rai, she effortlessly blocked it without flinching. Confused by the sudden escalation, Civil asked what was happening while Henry nursed a bruise from earlier, but admitted fearfully that he didn't know what would happen next. Before chaos could erupt further, Remington appeared like lightning between Rai and Hulkus with sword drawn, reminding them that if they wished to brawl, they should take it elsewhere. Trouble wouldn't be tolerated while their master was away. Unfazed by Remington's warning, Hulkus greeted him cheerfully and declared that he too wanted to duel Remington now. Irritated by Hulkus's insolence, Remington was about to scold him when something shifted in the air. A powerful force radiated throughout the training ground. Everyone felt it, a suffocating pressure emanating from none other than Theo himself as he approached them slowly but purposefully. Remington's eyes widened in realization. Something monumental had happened during Theo's 2 months of isolation. As tension mounted among them all, Hulkus grinned eagerly upon seeing Theo approach. The aura surrounding him spoke volumes of power strong enough to dominate any battlefield. And thus ends this chapter. Thank you for watching this video until the end. Support this channel by liking this video and subscribing the channel. And if you want me to recap another manhwa or manga, write its name on comment section. And if you want to know what happened in previous chapter, you can watch them in this YouTube channel.